I want to talk just briefly about the second reading before I go on to the gospel, because one of the things about the Epiphany is that the Epiphany is showing forth. It's showing forth to the Gentiles, those who are the Magi who came from hundreds of miles away to see the baby Jesus. But really, how does that work out in the early church? One of the good things about the book of Ephesians is that it was written somewhere around the early 60s. So Paul is under house arrest, but is writing to the church in Ephesus. And it's good that there's that time, because one of the things that happened was the Council of Jerusalem. There was always that question, well, what happens to the Gentile converts? Initially, there were simply Jews who were converting, but then all of a sudden, now you started having some of the Gentiles starting to convert. And so what happens to them? What's their point? What's their purpose? Are they kind of like the God-fearers at the time of Jesus, those who, accepted the idea of the God of Israel, but didn't want to be circumcised, so were kind of almost in a way second class. They had the court of the Gentiles. In the court of the Gentiles, they had the selling of the animals for sacrifice, and they had the changing of the coins in the temple. So what is their situation? So the Council of Jerusalem says basically just stay away from idolatry, stay away from it as much as you can. And get away from it, flee from that idolatry of the Gentiles. But that's it. No circumcision, no having to follow the entirety of the Jewish law. But still, what happens to the people? Are they kind of treated as, okay, we have the converts here, and then we have these other converts here? And instead, what St. Paul says is that it was not made known to people in other generations, but it's now been revealed to his holy apostles and prophets by the Spirit, that the Gentiles are co-heirs, members of the same body, and co-partners in the promise in Christ Jesus through the gospel. So I think that shows that they're fully integrated into the church. So we see that just 10 years or so after the Council of Jerusalem. In the gospel, what we have is that we have the Magi. The Magi are coming from the east, they're coming from a long distance. They see the star. They certainly could just stay there, because after all, what would happen if they were incorrect? What would happen if they missed it? If they were too delayed in terms of their travel, they missed it. What would happen? So it'd be prudent for them to just kind of stay still. But yet they leave everything and go and follow it. And as they're following the star, they do well. But then once they start having that human reason come into play, they make the error of going to Jerusalem, because, it seems, that's where, of course, the King of the Jews would be. If Jerusalem was the God's holy temple, was in Jerusalem, that you see that it was always from the time of King David, that was the place where God would dwell. With his people, would be in Jerusalem. So, of course, the Messiah had to be in Jerusalem. So they go to Jerusalem, and instead they have to ascertain from the people that it's going to be not in Jerusalem, but in Bethlehem. So they go then to Bethlehem. They then find the baby Jesus. They bring their gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Gold and frankincense for the king, and myrrh for his burial. And then they're warned by Herod, warned in a dream not to return to Herod, because Herod said, well, let me go, and I want to worship the baby Jesus. And certainly Herod could have, think about this, that Herod certainly could have. He could have said, that I'm the king because the Lord has given me that authority. But I'm going to worship not myself, but the King of Kings. But instead, what he had that paranoia, the paranoia that caused him to kill his wife, kill some of his sons, because he thought that they were somehow plotting against him. So instead, what the Magi do is that they go to their own country by another way. And so one of the things about it is really that showing forth that epiphany to the Gentiles. We think about, Jesus in coming into having the Magi come, and certainly the Magi wouldn't have been quiet about their situation. They would have told the people. Certainly we think about the people in Samaria. We have the woman at the well. We have the person who was there had the legion, had the many demons, and wants to follow Jesus, but he said, no, go tell your people. So really, in a way, those kind of epiphanies that we see early on that the apostles can take advantage of in spreading the gospel, because in a way, the seed has already been sown by the message of the Magi, by the message of the woman at the well, by the message of Legion, by the message of other people, and as Jesus goes and makes healing in Tyre and Sidon and those places in southern Lebanon that are Gentile territory. In all those ways, what we see is that pre-spreading of the gospel that Jesus we take advantage of by having having the apostles go out and to spread the gospel message to all the world. Thanks and God bless.